Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. President Bashar al-Assad issued the decree number 379 for the year 2012, setting Saturday, the 1st of December 2012 as the date for conducting the legislative elections to fulfill the vacant seats. Our armed forces have conducted a deal to serve the blows to the armed terrorist groups that spread panic among the citizens in Aleppo. The army units have eliminated terrorists in the Walid Bali area and in other areas in the city of Aleppo, in addition to the Souq al-Zahrawi squares in al-Jdeide and in the ancient city. They also cleared the areas of the Sharia school, which is near the castle, and they destroyed the terrorist machineries. In the governorate suburbs, our army units have carried out operations in the villages which are surrounding the area and around the cemetery in the Ain Jarrah area. And they also dealt heavy blows to the terrorist groups there. They killed a number of them, and they also seized some vehicles that were loaded with weapons and with various types of machine guns. Over to you, Lama.
Thank you, Khalid. In Idlib, an army unit clashed with an armed terrorist group that cut off roads and spread panic among citizens in al-Ghar al-Aliya and al-Ghassaniya in Jisr al-Shughur, killing and wounding all the group's members. Another army unit confiscates weapons and kills and wounds several terrorists in Benesh, in Marmash and Junudiya and Tel Salmo in Idlib suburbs. In Homs, the competent authorities confiscated a factory for manufacturing explosives in Al-War area, including 15 explosive devices, 25 explosives under construction, 3 barrels which contain explosive materials, 150 kilograms of C4 stuffs. Army units destroyed a car equipped with Dushka machine gun, killing a number of terrorists in Babhud. Army units also chased terrorist gunmen in Al-Jusiya region and Al-Qusayr countryside. In Jurat al-Shayah, army troops eliminated a number of terrorists and destroyed their hideouts. Back to you, Khalid.
Thank you, Lama. Delivering Syria's statement at the United Nations Security Council session held to discuss the situation in the Middle East, Dr. Bashar al-Jafari said that those who have hypocrisy allege keenness on the Syrian Arab Republic's people's rights, and they cannot ignore the people's rights to recover their occupied lands and cannot turn a blind eye to the Syrians who are under the Israeli occupation in the occupied Syrian Golan. Jafari pointed out that the Palestinian people have been waiting for more than 6 decades to be granted their simplest rights in setting up their free, independent, and fully sovereign state on their lands. He stressed that the flagrant foreign intervention in Syria's affairs is one of the obstacles and the efforts of the international reconciliation and dialogue. Moreover, he added that those countries are assaulting Syria's sovereignty through encouraging terrorism and offering all forms of logistic, financial, and political support to the armed terrorist groups and facilitating the passage of the foreign gunmen into the Syrian territories. Tehran asserted that the Syrian people should decide their own future by themselves, so that no one should intervene in the Syrian internal affairs, affirming that the support is provided by the suitable atmosphere for crystallizing the people's rights through the will and the free independent elections. Iran's position was expressed by the Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman during the press conference in Tehran, in which he asserted his country's support to the mission of the United Nations envoy Lakhdar Brahimi to resolve the Syrian crisis. The Iranian spokesperson also said that the proposal submitted by Iran to al-Brahimi states that the cooperation of all countries in order to stop the violence in Syria is necessary, and it will help in halting supplying terrorist groups with weapons and ammunition that they are using to commit crimes against the Syrian people. Back to you, Lama.
Thank you, Khalid. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Gennady Karlov said that any peacekeeping mission in Syria should be done through the UN Security Council, and it needs the approval of the Syrian government in particular. In a statement today, Karlov said that the UN Security Council is the only party that is able to send peacekeeping force to Syria, and up till now, no one has submitted a formal proposal for that. Karlov added that the time, form, members, and functions of a peacekeeping mission are things that need details studied by the Security Council. Karlov said that Russia remains in constant contact with the UN envoy to Syria, Lakhdar Ibrahimi, and he's invited him to hold consultations in the near future. Prime Minister Dr. Wael Halki expressed pride in the steadfastness of the Syrian people and their rallying around the army forces in confronting terrorism and conspiracies. During his meeting with the head of the General Union of Syrian Women, Majda Qait, and members of the union's executive office, Al-Halki said, "We are optimistic about the future and working with our people and the NGOs to get past the current situation and achieve the national reconciliation to pave the way for or from the post-crisis area and build a free, strong and renewed Syria." Al-Halqi added that the economic situation is good despite the sanctions and all goods are available in good quantities. Al-Halqi discussed with Qtait and members of the union the activities of the union and its effective role under the current events in caring for the effective families. The meeting also tackled the union's work and the status of its service and development projects, especially those related to childhood development programs and women empowerment. Al-Halqi also held the role of the union in the construction and development process, underlining the programs or the government support to it as it enhances its role. Over to you, Khaled.
Thank you, Lama. The representative of the Zionist entity at the United Nations Security Council threatened with grave consequences the state that would support the Palestinians' request for the full membership at the United Nations Security Council, warning them against the repercussions of such a decision. No reaction was voiced by the Council's member condemning the Israeli intransigence and impertinence. The Reuters news agency quoted the American ambassador to the United Nations as saying yesterday that the United Nations Security Council's that unilateral measures include the initiatives that aim at granting the Palestinians the status of the observer as a non-member state at the United Nations, and this would only jeopardize the peace process and it would complicate the efforts that are being exerted in the direction of the negotiations. During the session chaired by the Speaker, Muhammad Jihad al-Laham, the People's Assembly discussed the law on regulating the Dental Association's work to be ratified later. The speeches delivered by the members of the Parliament stressed the importance of amending the law regulating the association's work as to be consistent with the newest constitution and to cope with the scientific developments and the profession's requirements and the achievements that are being made at the service of the citizens. The member of the Parliament, Mr. Faridib, underlined the importance of enhancing the law or enacting the law that regulates the work of the association in light of the developments that Syria is witnessing. Also, other members underlined the importance of ratifying the new modern law that takes into consideration all the important issues in this domain, as the members of the doctors have doubled and the nature of the problems have changed. The Assembly also agreed to request the resignation of the member, Mr. Al-Danda, who was nominated as Syria's ambassador to Iraq. The Assembly also ratified the members' questions for new reviews. Now over to our final item for tonight with my partner Lama.
Thank you, Khaled. Federal Establishment for Communication is following up the project of linking the Syrian network with neighboring countries, which aim at establishing an infrastructure that depends mainly on land networks with optical cables, in addition to linking the network through the sea to benefit from the geographical location of Syria as a cross point and in all directions. The establishment further added that this project was already launched and that it would contribute in reducing the costs of international capacities, which would enhance service with good prices in addition to creating an economic unity in the Middle East.
With this, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of our news bulletin for tonight. Thank you for joining us.
Damascus Radio presents News and Views. The initiatives and proposals that are usually issued from Moscow and Beijing vis-à-vis the Syrian crisis confirm numerous facts which begin with the deep understanding of the crisis nature. They also confirm their strategic dimensions and goals, which are based on colonialist hegemony as well as the expansionist projects, the origin of which is Zionist, even if they were implemented with Arab and Western tools. Besides, the Russian and Chinese stances take the people's right of self-determination into account and rejection of all forms of military, economic, and political intervention in the internal affairs of countries. The Russian and Chinese stances emanate from the national interest of the two states, especially that the happenings in Syria in particular and the Arab region in general directly affect the interests of these two great states. Even the effect is on their national security. On this, one should comprehend what Moscow has referred to more than once when it announced that the new world order shall be born in Syria. This means that the unipolar order, in addition to the U.S. dominance, will vanish with no return, so a multipolar order will replace for the people's causes. In this concern, and for that purpose, the unified stand adopted by Moscow and Beijing was produced for the necessity of an inevitable solution of the crisis in Syria, in accordance with the Security Council resolutions and the Geneva Statement. Now, the ball is in the other's court, specifically in the Turkish government's one, as long as Turkey represents the cachet for the armed terrorist groups and the huge den of terrorism. That was News and Views from Damascus Radio. Damascus Radio presents Syrian Local Press Review. The papers published today gave prominence to the following headlines and news items. President Bashar al-Assad issues a presidential decision, number 18, providing for forming a committee on maintaining and rehabilitating the great Umayyad Mosque in Aleppo. The General Command of the Syrian Army declares that what some proxy mass media published on the murder of shedding the Syrian blood is baseless, especially the reports on the Syrian Army using cluster bombs. The Syrian armed forces carry on their qualitative operations, killed tens of terrorists, destroyed 3 mortar cannons, 20 vehicles for transporting terrorists and weapons, and 2 boats in Katana. Russia negates the claims which allege that Syria uses cluster bombs. On its part, Moscow stressed that it will officially demand recovering the shipment that was on board the Syrian airliner, which was coercively landed in Turkey. A remarkable Iraqi member of parliament warns of the establishment of a far more dangerous organization than Al-Qaeda, which is called Jabhat al-Nusra. No matter what the purpose it wanted, what the Turkish authorities have lately done to the Syrian airliner was a reckless, timid, and stupid act. The front page editorial in Tishrin Daily says that the Turkish procedure is labeled, according to the international law, as an overt piracy crime. The reference is a trend followed by Erdogan's government. A second reference can be attributed to the perspective of the invariables of the Syrian-Russian policies. Every now and then, the Government of Development and Justice Party in Turkey proves that its ability to manufacture troubles with neighboring countries and causing chaos to the Turkish people is part of its task. In other words, it is larger than its ability to make peace in the region and protect its people's interests, the paper concludes. That was a review of the Syrian local press issued in Damascus this morning.
Quest for Peace, World's Option. Prepared by Afaf Nablsi. Presented by Randa Qaddura. Sound technician Hamdi Shweki. Good evening, dear listeners, to all of you. Peace is now in the eye of windfall. It is an old-time say in Arabia in depicting any considerable issue endangered. Then, ages away, threat to peace or any other highly valued affair was crunched and split in dungeon with no penetrating counteract, for there were effective journaling media. Now, the peace cause is in the centerpiece of world attention. Some critics are surely pessimistic over the fate of peace. They hold firmly that such causes are all-timers to set to annihilation and no being. The cause of peace is just like any aging profession, like midwife. She gave way to high-tech medicine. This job predicts precisely date and fate of pregnancy in minute precision. Once delivery happens, the specialized physicist announces to who is in care happy born being, as in Arabia and elsewhere. The persistent question now in mass circulation is whether peace as cause is doomed to extinct, or it is on way to oblivion, to invite war-make acts and practices. Answer to this urgent quest is quite acceptable. It lays insistence on the very nature and origin of peace. It dates to the man creation on the ground of earth. Still, it occupies the human's crux and core in eternal showdown with devil and its entailed agents, the neo-colonialists and their Zionist rabbinicals, cardinals. Explanation to this standpoint is our traditions, and the traits are deeply digged in the very conscience and minds. The peace advocates are as always on the ready to die for peace only for its cause, and with them radiate sympathizers and salvagers. It happens in past and the present that peace lovers pay with life for their state still and get drowned, for they are bad swimmers. This sounds the widely circulated countryside song, "Oh my darling." They cater peace as crazy lovers do for their heart-broke darling, Clementine. Dead or not, the peace lovers now or vow unabated encounter for their cause peace. They are never alone in midnight hours and in sun darkness. The cause is upheld in utmost dedication and unflinching resolve. The whole format seems like much-fanned comedy in similarly unconventional ties with peace. Nevertheless, rumors circulated in mass lays about surfacing desertion like any other alienation. Ground for such predictions take the caretaker to fake descriptions foreseen with whistle-blow foolers. Therefore, stargazers and foul fortune-tellers find no listening ear to what they foresee. Omens to all peace advocates, the way to peace and sustenance, signs good fortune. It strikes in striking precision, with still in make stories about the road to Kaaba and way for peace. Those literal giants pose pyramid-like summits as they are the abundant fruit of well-vintage endeavors. No argument, there's right next corner, theory of conspiracy. It hides back, plucks apart to tell tales about many big powers and Zionist chieftains, what are bent on plotting at us, we, the peace lovers. You have been listening to a new edition of the weekly program, Quest for Peace, World's Auction from Radio Damascus. With best regards from our sound technician, Hamdi Shweki.
A weekly program prepared by Ma'moon Samra and read by Lama Sais. With the company of sound engineer Hamdi Shweki. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Customs General Director says export is not subjected to fees or restrictions. Director General of the Customs, Majid Al-Hakimi, stressed that no customs or any other financial fees are being imposed on export apart from the local administration fees imposed on some materials of construction. In a statement, Al-Hakimi added that export in Syria is not subjected to any form of administrative restrictions such as an export license, noting that a few materials are banned from being exported for economic purposes, including sheep. He also referred to certain commodities, the exporting of which is confined to certain periods of time, such as male sheep during cattle reproduction. The Customs General Director also cited other restricted commodities that can only be exported as surplus after the local market needs are met, including egg and chicken. Al-Hakami pointed out that the government has issued a number of legislations to post-export, namely Investment Law Number 10 and Law Number 8 for 2007, which encouraged export through making industrial projects, including in the exemptions enacted in these two laws. On the customs procedures regarding export, the Director General affirmed that exports get customs declarations during the same day and are not subjected to the detailed customs check except in case of the existence of economic restrictions imposed on exporting such products. Export is one of the most important sources of national income in Syria, which still follows the planned economy system that adopts mechanisms of preventing export and importing some of the commodities as a way for protecting and encouraging the national industry. Arabic rice planting experiment in Raqqa is promising. The successive drought waves which hit the eastern region in Syria did not prevent deriving new methods of cultivations and organizing types of cereals, grocery and fruits that suit the weather conditions in the region, the most important for cultivating strategic crops like cotton, barley, wheat, and now rice. The applying of the Arabic method of rice growing, which has started recently in Raqqa province in northeastern Syria, has increasingly become a need to face the difficulties in exporting it from abroad. The necessity of speeding up the implementation of this method has pushed the Ministry of Agriculture to seek help from experts, particularly from Egypt, after the government launched the Pioneer Project in cooperation with the FAO to spread dry rice planting in a Raqqa present. Engineer Khalid Shreidi, the national coordinator of the Arabic rice growing project at the Agriculture Ministry, said the type of the rice cultivated by this method are divided into 3 groups: early, middle, and late growing, adding that the Syrian agriculture land suits only the first 2 types. He noted that all the types planted since the first season were not exposed to insect or diseases cases, which is promising for rice cultivation, stressing that the early growing crops yield high quality production. Syria today. A weekly program prepared by Ma'moon Samra and read by Lama Sais. With the company of sound engineer Hamdi Shweki.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're still listening to Damascus Radio, the broadcasting service of the Syrian Arab Republic. Before we sign off, here is a final look at the news summary with my partner, Lama.
President Bashar al-Assad issues a decree setting Saturday, the 1st of December 2012, as the date of conducting legislative elections to fill the vacant seats. Our armed forces eliminate scores of militants and destroy their hideouts and tools in several regions. Syria's representative at the UN Security Council, Jafari, affirms that the flagrant violation or the flagrant foreign intervention in Syria's affairs obstacle the efforts of national reconciliation and dialogue aimed at building Syria. Tehran has said that the Syrian people should decide their own future by themselves so that no one should intervene in Syria's internal affairs. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Gennady Garilov says that any peacekeeping mission in Syria should be done through the UN Security Council and it needs the approval of the Syrian government in particular. And Washington denies the Palestinian people the simplest right to UN membership.
With this, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of our news transmission for tonight. Best wishes from all the staff here at Damascus Radio, and good night.